Hi, it's Rev Pepsi here, and I'm sort of going on from this video I did on Yusuf Estes. I want to query something, and maybe it says some Muslim, maybe Mr. Estes himself would like to come on and comment and respond to this. In many of your videos, many of Yusuf Estes' videos, he claims to have been a Christian preacher. And many people who big him up and say he's a great evangelist for Islam says he was a Christian preacher as well. I wonder how much actually Yusuf Estes actually remembers of his time preaching Christianity. Because, I mean, apart from the fact that the video I did earlier concerning the word sword, he doesn't seem to finish the quotations and stuff. He just mentions where the sword is and gives no context or anything like that. He does actually say, when he's talking about the event in Gethsemane, where someone gets their ear cut off, he uses the word, there's some, the phrase, it was some altercation in Gethsemane, and swords are flying around and someone gets their ear cut off. Now, as I've already pointed out, this was the arrest of Jesus at the Garden of Gethsemane, when Judas betrays him. The 12, all the disciples desert him, and the temple guards come and arrest him. And of course, in John's Gospel especially, identifies who it was who had his ear cut off and who held the sword. And all the other Gospels, although they don't identify Peter and Malchus by name, they are consistent to say that it was one of Jesus' companions who held the sword, and it was the high priest's servant who got his ear cut off. And of course later on, in John's Gospel, when Jesus is on trial, which actually I've never had a Muslim come and answer the question whether he was actually on trial or not. If he wasn't killed, he wasn't crucified, did he actually go through a trial? At what point was he rescued? But while he's on trial, Peter's outside waiting to hear news or whatever, and a relative of Malchus comes up and says, "You're a Galilean, you're one of Jesus' followers, arrest him, arrest this guy." And it's one of the times that Peter, it's important because Peter turns around and says, "No, I never knew him, didn't know this man, never knew him." Okay, so you've got very key events taking place here, and Yusuf just simply says, "Oh, there's a bit of argy-bargy taking place in the Garden of Gethsemane, and somebody gets his ear cut off." Yeah. This guy was a Christian preacher. I ought to ask, what were you preaching, Yusuf? Before you became a Christian, what were you preaching? I can't think of anyone else ever hearing anyone else who would claim, even an atheist who would talk about the text of the Bible in that way, let alone someone who would at that time believed it. Bart Ehrman testifies that there is no event in history which has the type of evidence to support the fact that Jesus died on the cross by Roman crucifixion. And right at the very beginning of this story, you're just saying there's some altercation. I just can't see linguistically how anyone who truly knew the story would describe it in English in that way. They would put it in, they would be naturally, a Christian preacher, even if they renounced their faith, would be programmed by their tradition, by the routine, to put the context in and say, well, at the arrest of Jesus, someone drew a sword and cut off someone's ear. Not talk about it as though it was one of many regular pub brawls. Well, Jesus went to the tavern in Capernaum and there was a scrap, and there was a couple of idiots there with swords and someone got their ear cut off. Then they went in Jerusalem and they were in the temple. Oh, and that pub just outside the temple. Oh dear, did you see that? Did you see John? Did you see John and John and Matthew? They're fluffing around with the swords there, and this God comes up and says, hello, hello, hello. And they cut his ear off. Oh my goodness gracious me. Oh dear, it was kind. And then that night, before it happened, alright, he did an alteration, something. And there's swords flying around and someone got their ear lopped off. Dear, oh dear. No, they wouldn't do that. This is it's linguistically impossible. I truly believe it's linguistically impossible. Unless, of course, you've either totally forgotten, which I don't think you have, or you really didn't know what the circumstances was. I can't think of anyone who would have been a believer who just used that phraseology. Oh, and there was this altercation in Gethsemane, and someone got their ear lopped off. Swords were flying around, someone got their ear lopped off. No, they would say there was, at the arrest of Jesus, someone drew a sword and cut off their ear, and cut off that person's ear. They would put it into context. It just makes me feel that perhaps you weren't a Christian preacher for very long. And you obviously, I don't think you actually read the Bible or knew the full Bible stories very long. So I wonder what exactly you were preaching. Perhaps you might enlighten me on that. Thank you very much, Mr. Estes, if you're watching. I'd very much like to hear it. And if anyone else there is a supporter of Yusuf Estes, who knows, who he has told what he preached and stuff, it'd be really interesting to know. Thank you very much indeed.